Hello, and welcome to the All About Pigeons podcast. We have a very special episode for you today, so stick around. Today, we're doing a special listener chat episode with Newcomers into the Pigeon World with Ryan Mayu. Ryan, thanks for coming on and talking with us today.
Hey, I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
Let's get a little bit of background on you and background on how you got into pigeons.
Yeah, for sure. So in my late teens, I actually picked up a German short hair pointer, brought it home, but realized I kind of need some pigeons to go along with that. So I ended up back to my grandparents' farm, and I picked up actually the old outhouse that was behind the barn and brought it home. So that was kind of my first loft. So then I headed out from that point to a small town to an auction and picked up a bunch of birds. And they went from 50 cents to maybe $5 a bird. And I didn't know what I was buying. I just bought everything I could get my hands on, brought it home, kind of worked with them for a little bit. And, to show you how green I was, one of the birds started doing these little somersaults in the air, which I was like, oh, something's not right here. And talked to some guys. Apparently, that's what they're supposed to do. So I was kind of shocked about that. I ended up getting a bunch of wild birds that I mixed into my loft. And then their heads started kind of doing some spinning action. So that was kind of the end of my pigeons back in my late teens when I was training. Fast forward now, about 2020 during COVID, during the lockdown, everything going on. My little girls were trying to find something to do. So I actually thought about purchasing some racing pigeons, brought them home, we trained them up. I would bring them out of town, live in a real small town, and the pigeons would race back in, and we'd see what kind of pigeon made it home first. And mom had one, and each girl had one, and that was a lot of fun. We enjoyed doing that, and kind of got the interest of getting back into pigeons again, or at least looking for some of the breeds I had, the little small rollers. Made some phone calls to guys out of Windsor, Ontario, and I picked up what they call a bearded roller. It's a really small bird. It's been around Windsor for about 60 plus years, as far as I can find out. We're assuming it came from the Czech line of rollers. The guys have bred them so long now that they don't look like the original bird. They have like a small beard with white flights. From there, it just kind of took off. I've been working my way through it ever since, I guess, trying to figure things out and learn as I go. So that was kind of my introduction to pigeons and how I kind of got into them.
Were you able to find any other pigeon fanciers or a club in your area?
There's a couple. Nobody really did anything much for rollers in our area. Nobody really competed. There was a racing club out of Windsor, Ontario. They actually just recently closed down, which is unfortunate. The guys I did talk to, like the bearded roller guys, they were excellent. They would just give you birds, whatever you wanted. They're stupendous and just help me out getting started, which I so appreciate.
Have you participated in any of the local races at all, or even one loft races?
No, there's no real racing that's close to where I'm at in location. And as far as one loft race, no. Again, nothing really too close that I've gone into at all. I stuck with most of the rolling pigeons and kind of stayed away from the racers for the most part. That was just my general introduction I had, and I moved them on.
Oh, so a bearded roller, huh?
Yeah, so it basically looks like to get the idea of it. Not going to say this totally right, but a Revolchek roller from Czech Republic. They're a very short beard, a very small bird, about 220 grams, white flight, nice little bird, and they fly really well. They kit really good. They don't roll so well, but I really like the breed. And since it's a Windsor bird too, that kind of helps.
Right. What about when they're flying then? Do they like, is it one or two tumbles, or do they actually drop down a little bit in a spin?
They usually will set their wings up. They don't really spin hardly ever. It's unfortunate. I think the guys have bred them so long for more show than actual rolling, which I can understand, I guess, if that's what they were going for. They were probably getting hit too much by the hawks out of Windsor. So they really focused on the look of the bird, kind of turned to a show bird more than anything else. But they do fly. They'll set their wings a bit. I have one now that will do a couple of flips, but that's about as far as they'll go. My goal that I'm trying to work on is trying to put the roll back into them. If that's possible, I don't know, but we're definitely gonna give her a shot.
There you go. That's the whole idea. Selective breeding. Just get what you want out of them.
That's it.
Have you been able to show them at all? Is there any shows going on in that area?
There is one local show. It's
Okay.
hard to convince my wife that's a good idea to put pigeons in a show, but we're working on that because I guess I am still somewhat new to them, but haven't made it. Have been to a couple of different auctions, local auctions, and that. And you always come back with more, obviously. different type of birds. My girls do. We do have some parlor rollers as well. We like our parlors.
There you go.
Yeah, we bred them. The girls enjoy them. They roll them a bit, but they're hard to find. They're not too readily available where I'm at. So,
I think that's kind of the scene with parlor rollers everywhere. That's the breed I play with a lot, and the breeders of those are pretty few and far between and hard to get a hold of.
seems that way. I'm running out. I need some more blood, that's for sure, in my line, anyhow.
How do your parlor rollers roll? What kind of distance can you get on those guys?
Oh, I think we're 15 feet, 15, 20 feet.
Yeah, okay.
It's a bit of a gap in there, but that's really kind of where we're rolling at. I don't know if that's good or bad. I got nothing to really compare it to. I just kept the best ones I had.
A 10-footer can make a 1,000-footer, right? That's what they say. So you got stock there at least.
Yeah, there we go. There we go.
That's a fun breed right there. So coming into it, and you've played with racers, now you got rollers and parlor rollers. What's been your biggest struggle?
Yeah, well, the funny thing actually, as a newcomer, I was kind of did a lot of research and looking around. I was kind of surprised by the lack of information I could find on actual loft and loft design and construction. I was looking for like a good solid set of plans, a blueprint, takeoff material list, an actual cut sheet list I can work from to actually cut all the material for it, and then assemble it quite easily and simply. And I had a hard time locating that. I end up looking at different things on YouTube and seeing different guys lost, but some guys are getting things that are maybe pre-built or something different. I just wanted a direct, simple formula to be able to create a well-constructed loft and kit box basically, and struggle with it. So I ended up designing, I think, 17 different concepts I've had, 8 different kit boxes. I built 5 different lofts, 6 different kit boxes since two. I did that within 3 years of pigeons.
So you're a loft expert then, right?
Oh no, I wouldn't say that. No, no.
That's a lot of lofts in a short period of time there.
Well, because you don't know what works necessarily, right? And you're looking on YouTube and that might work for them, but may not for me. And I'm a guy that, like, I can go buy the wood. I once my plans were done, I just basically chopped everything, put in a pile, don't look at the prints, and I can assemble the bottom and the sides, and just kind of all comes together really nicely. And you can really think out what you're building prior to doing it, which is always nice. So that was my biggest challenge coming in, which I was a little surprised, to be honest with you, since there's so many worldwide people flying pigeons. And I talked to a World Cup roller, Canadian guy, and he was in England and he noticed a construction they had over there, they took over here. And I was like, that doesn't really make sense to me. I think there'd be a little more freedom for information, and maybe somebody that actually has some plans that are decent to purchase. I mean, is it Izzy Hater, if I said that correctly, from Australia you had on, even he mentioned it about the judges seeing all the different setups everybody has. And I'm sure some setups working better than others. So for a newcomer, it's great to give them birds, but maybe help them with some construction as well and give them some pointers on how to build a proper box or kit box or something.
When I would look online for different stuff, Pinterest was always an app that I would use for especially DIY kind of stuff. But every time I'd come across anything Pigeon Loft related, it was like, pay this amount to download our file or whatever. And it's like, I don't know. Like the whole thing looked really general and not really specific for pigeons. It was like chicken loft, pigeon loft, whatever. And YouTube, I guess it would go back to what they're doing with their loft.
Yeah, like what works best for them. Now, the National Roller website, they had some stuff, but it was dated a little bit older, and it gave kind of general information again. It wasn't like a full detailed print. You gotta find a bit discouraging at times, but it is what it is with the hobby, I guess.
One resource that I have found was really good for very detailed loft designs, and it's going to go back to what you're doing with it. But if you get breed specific books, like if you get a book specifically for like a muffed type pigeon, they're going to give you loft designs that are really going to be good for not damaging the feathers on their feet. Or breed specific books will give you really good breakdowns. Like I just came up on a book on fantails, and it gave really specific dimensions and where to put your the cocks and the hens and show cages and everything for fantail breeding loft. And that wouldn't necessarily work for rollers or racers, but for that breed it would. And I think something where if you could find a book, and there's a lot of old pigeon books, there's not really too many new ones coming out. Maybe some of David Henderson's stuff, especially for rollers, would be good for that. Maybe he has some loft designs in there, but maybe a breed specific book would give you more of a detailed breakdown of a loft.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I got John Bender's book. I read that. It's a really good book. He goes over the overall sizing of what to use or for his current setup that he uses for rollers and that, and his kit boxes, which helps again for sizing wise, but material not exact. I didn't, it's a fair comment you made. I didn't really looked into some of the fancier ones. I was more focused on rollers and some of the racers. The racing setup, they'll tell you overalls, but not a specific breakdown of actual materials to the exact length and foot to be cut. That's what I experienced as a bit of a struggle, but maybe other people find it differently.
But at the same time, you've also built a few lofts and you've obviously had birds in them, right? So there has to be a little bit of trial and error. And I mean, it kind of sucks having to reinvent the wheel when you probably shouldn't have to. I bet the last loft that you built, it's got to look different than the first one, right?
Yeah, if you want, I'll send you pictures of it. You can, if you want to check it out by all means. I actually, it looks pretty nice. The guys call it Pigeon Palace around here. And it's not overly that big either. It's 8 by 12 with an 8 by F breeding section and a 4 by 8 breeding section. The fours are all laminated. And I use the wooden pellets on the bottom. It's easier to clean here, so I'm not in as much. All the nesting boxes, actually, the nesting boxes were all, I designed them and built them as like almost you would do a box perch. They're actually strips of plywood, and you would do it halfway in each plywood. So you put together, it's a big, massive box perch, and just kind of shoved it against the wall, and then I was able to fill in the rest. Like stuff like that, I think would really help newcomers coming out, save you a lot of time and to build it. And then you get, like I said, you get a decent setup and a lot less thinking. The one I did was my current kit box that I kind of settled on was 6 by 3 by 3, and the lid opens up and has a divider in the center that I can pull out. So it can be one big or one big section or not. And there's trays that pull out that'll catch everything below it, and it's all in casters, so I can move it around to whatever position I need to be in. And something like that's a nice little starter
Yeah.
for somebody. They can actually have breeding on one side if they want or not. There's a sun cage on top. There's doors on the back side that open up so the birds can come out and go on top of the kit box if need be. Another nice one that I did that I moved on was a 4 by 8 construction. Again, all on casters. And the theory behind that is I live in town, so depending on which way the sun in the wintertime, I would shift the loft to a different location, more protected from the cold elements, and still get a bit of the sun during the cold weather. 4 by 8 loft on casters, it would actually be able to go into the garage itself as well, which was kind of nice. You can slide your loft into the small loft into the garage, do what you want with the birds inside, to clean whatever you want, and then you can kind of roll it back outside.
Yeah. I think with a lot of lofts, being able to have control is always a big part of it.
Yeah, until you find exact positioning and where you want to place it.
You said there were other pigeon people up in your area. Were you able to go and visit any of their lofts and get ideas?
Yeah, I did, but yeah, some of them have like older sheds they might utilize and they put up fencing inside that. One gentleman actually creatively used a trailer and got an RV trailer out, and he put pigeon lofts in that, which was interesting. It worked well. Another gentleman I talked to or actually looked at his stuff, he used the pallets and built his up. So everybody has their means and their ways of doing things. I maybe just like something a little more structured from a building perspective. Anyhow, that's what I did. Build a couple of them, and ended up moving them out. Some guys were actually interested in them, so I just gave them away. And a couple I sold off. So
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of conversion lofts. I've never heard of an RV being torn apart and turning into one, but hey, you see free RVs all the time. That might not be a terrible idea.
no, not at all. Well, you can technically use any structure you want really to build a loft in. As one guy said, it doesn't matter, but it does help when you have a nice idea of doors and functionality and the way sizing things will be done correctly. It does help and go a long way. So you're not kind of making it up as you go along.
My first loft was a conversion loft. It was an old shed I had that I turned into a pigeon loft. And after that, I was, you know what, I wish I had this and I wish I had that. So then the next building I built was built specifically for a kit box for rollers, steel on the floor, everything fell through nice and clean. Everything was just so much easier. And later on down the road, I would like to build a bigger loft, move forward with issues that I've had in the past with the other loft and build something that I really, really want. But yeah, when you can actually build the loft as a loft, and sometimes those conversion things you wind up putting twice as much work into and you're still not really satisfied.
Well, yeah, that's just it. You're learning as you're building. It's kind of nice to be able to get a set of plans that's already done. You don't have to worry about changing as much. That's it's designed correctly, and it's going to function correctly as a pigeon loft and set up nicely, right? For your area, because some are different, right? Because we're cooler up this way, so I don't know if you're running a cage floor the entire time. A lot of guys don't do that. They have wooden floors and they run cat litter or pellets down below. But for every area, it might be different. But it's nice to have a completed design.
Another good book that had was Levi's book, The Pigeon, and in the Pigeon Encyclopedia, he had a couple of good layouts, but nothing really too specific. It was pretty general, but I feel like some of the different breed books I've had have had really detailed breakdowns, actual individual measurements. But online, it's a struggle, just like information. You get a lot of different opinions on stuff, and actually finding, especially some of the YouTube stuff, is when they do the time lapse film. They're not showing you their measurements or cutting. They're just like aboard, boom. Look at this, beautiful loft I just built in 2 seconds.
No, absolutely, and that's just like okay, great. Now how big's your size? Like how big did you do? How high did you make it? What did you do? Like it's like okay, great, that's awesome. Now I gotta try to go slow mo and try to figure it all out and try to guess at it, or that's a big thing. And then the one thing maybe people that have been in it for a long time, I found it slightly discouraging is when I called up one of the clubs. I said I would make you guys a set of prints if you want a set of prints to help you guys out and to help newcomers and. I was kind of told, well, you don't really need to do that. I just kind of put a building, throw birds in. I was kind of disappointed in that, to be honest. Just too bad. I wish they would have kind of took me up on the offer, but I think you've been in it so long, get so used to, building your own stuff.
And that's it, for them, it's their lofts are done already. And
Yeah, but if you don't know, you don't know. Like a new person starting out, why is your bird spinning in the air? They don't even know why. Like when you kind of get into the pigeon thing, it almost comes, in my opinion, a little overwhelming. There's so many different breeds. There's so many things the pigeons can do, from divers to cutters to rollers to racers to all the different fancy. It's massive, right? There's so many different things that you can look at, and in every setup, like you said, is different. Running with muffs, it may be a different setup than you're running with rollers or racers. There's just so much there, and everyone might be like a slightly different approach to what you're doing. So I think you said that the Pacific book is nice that they would offer that information to be able to set up your loft according to the breed that you have.
yeah, and then yeah, looking at what the guys are doing in your area, just for the geographic, like you're saying, I'm in Arizona, Europe, there in the north. We have different climates, so you're going to have some differences in your loft design as well there too.
Mhm.
So, what was the most helpful thing to kind of guide you into a good loft that you're satisfied with?
I can't say a Pacific one actually, because I just basically took a number of once I got the spacing down, how many birds I want per spacing per square foot, I was able to come up with a rough. And then and another thing too is when you're buying a plywood, it's 4 feet by 8 feet, right? So you're kind of stuck with nominal sizing. So it's like how you're going to build a 4 by 8, you're going to be 8 by 8, 8 by 12, 8 by 16. So you're going to be set on certain sizes when you're doing actual loft. So I kind of worked on the size I had and then worked backwards from there. I did see one gentleman's loft, and I really liked the way his doors were. They had like a pine that kind of folded down, and then they get a lift and they stood straight up, so it locked them off from going inside the loft or inside the box for nesting. I really like that idea, the way he had it strips on it. So I kind of took that concept, took my footprint that I had to work with, and could actually construct it from there on. And just kind of added my own little things to it as well, with a lot of lighting, ventilation, right? So.
Do you subscribe to any like pigeon magazines up there?
Yeah, there's the fancier pigeon for on Canada. I do that. That was about it. There is a racing as well up this way, but again, it's kind of dying off, unfortunately. The Windsor Club is closed. The Chatham Club is closed. The guys out of Windsor actually inquiring quite a bit. I've given a fair bit of birds away to them, getting into rollers now, since their club is no longer there. Some of those guys are doing one-off races, and the ones that are not, it seems like they're getting to rollers. I wish there was more people that were doing pigeons. It would be nice. I really enjoy them. I find them extremely relaxing. I really love flying my kit every day, coming home from work and kind of relaxing a bit on the back porch and just watching them go.
So, how many birds are you flying right now?
Kit box, I got about 40 birds from last a year from holdover.
Okay, nice.
And I have, how many breeders do I have? 16 breeders I think keeping this year.
Is your breeding season started now up there?
But yeah, some guys have already paired up. I haven't just yet. I should be doing it this weekend. I like to do a good clean out of the loft, make sure everything's cleaned. I'll start pairing them back up.
I mean, is it still pretty cold up there?
Just last week, it's actually broke. It was pretty chilly this winter, but actually just got warm, and the snow's pretty much gone to a large extent now, which is kind of nice.
So, what kind of plans do you have for the future? You ever gonna look into doing some more shows? I know you kind of talked about that a little bit, or maybe trying other breeds, or what kind of future plans do you have with your pigeons?
I want to go to a couple different shows, local shows if I can, this fall, if possible. Also, I've talked to a couple guys in the World Cup. I want to kind of venture in that area. There's not a whole lot that compete in Ontario. I think there are like say 7, 8 guys or something that are actually competing. I would love to kind of work a kit towards that. I'm obviously not there yet, but something to actually strive for.
Is it pretty difficult to import birds to Canada?
That's a good question. I know guys that brought them across. I'm not too far from the border, but I haven't done it myself. There's definitely some birds down there I'd love to get my hands on that you guys have that we don't have up here, that's for sure. I know the roller started from Canada going your way. That's for, from the research I read.
As far as shipping and stuff like that for racer guys that are doing one loft races, but then Ryan, he's on the other side, but I know Ryan with Feathers Elite, he has a one loft race up in Canada. There's got to be other one loft races, right?
Yeah, I think there's one out of the Niagara Falls area. I think there's a prairie race, and I believe there's one on the East Coast as well for the one loft. I don't think I'm that good of a breeder to put a bird in the one loft, unfortunately.
Is there a national club for showing fancy pigeons?
We just have one local club here in Sarnia that I know of. I'm sure there's some more by Toronto. I'm kind of a county guy. I'm not a big city guy. I don't like to go to the city too often, so I'll stay out in the county where I'm safe, I guess. Yeah, there's just the one show that's not too far from us. There's another one in Woodstock, a little ways out. We go to. Might take the girls to that. We enjoy that when we get to go. It's a lot of fun.
Do your kids help with cleaning the loft and watching the birds fly and everything else?
They like watching the birds fly for sure. I clean the loft, yeah, not so much. They love the parlor rollers, and they usually grab the babies before they're really flighting, and they kind of hold them like a. I do falconry as well, so they kind of put them on their arm like a falconry bird.
Oh yeah.
So they're like, "Hey, Dad, look what I got." I'm like, "Yeah, that's not the same thing, but that's good. Then we'll get them there eventually."
My little kids who like to hold the pigeons, it kind of helps just get the pigeons more tame and easier to handle and everything else. And yeah, parlor rollers are great for that because once they get to that state where they can't really fly, then they're perfect for kids to hold because if they drop it, it's not going to take off and fly away. It'll just start rolling.
Yeah, we learned that the hard way when there were still actually a little bit of flight in them. We're chasing these parlors everywhere, trying to catch them in the low-lying trees. Yeah, you're absolutely right about that for sure.
So, how did you find the podcast?
Actually, funny enough, I was cleaning the pigeon loft. And I'm like, we really need a podcast, something on pigeons. There's a lot on different topics, and there's a lot of videos out there, but there's not an actual good solid podcast. You really need something. And I think within that was last year in January sometime, and then I found you. It was great, and I think you guys really nailed the nail on the head. There was something that was really needed. There's nothing there. There's a couple other guys that do it on like sort of YouTube, but not on Spotify that I noticed anyhow. It was nice to listen to, and I've always enjoyed every episode.
Cool, man. That's good to hear. Outside of this, I guess I don't think we've ever really done loft design as a specific episode, so that's our bad.
It's just something that I think that'd be awesome if clubs would, help some new people starting off, or maybe looking to get some guy to help them to make a nice set of prints. They really help get people started. I think it's a necessity that needs to be done. That's just not there yet. It's unfortunate.
Just the whole idea, right? If the pigeon hobby was out in the open, like in front of more people, like because you go to a lot of these like farm supply stores and they got these, turnkey chicken coops, which I'm sure work for like maybe like two or three chickens until they decide to actually build a real chicken coop. But there really isn't anything where it's like a turnkey loft for roller pigeons or a small loft for a few racing pigeons. It's just not there.
No, no, it's definitely not there. Which would be great if you can just purchase one and go. But yeah, I couldn't find anything myself anyhow. Not in on Southern Ontario anyhow.
Well, yeah, some of those guys in Europe, they're doing it out of their attic. That's definitely some next level stuff. I really like the look of that. Poking their head out through the roof, watching their birds fly.
Yeah, I don't think my wife's gonna go for that at all. That's
No.
just not gonna happen. Not gonna happen. Then the neighbors were like, "What's this guy doing out here, poking his head out his window, looking for the birds to fly?"
Well, I mean, that's it though. There when it comes to lofts, there almost isn't a general loft. Everyone's done such wild things. And yeah, when we were talking with Izzy down in Australia and talking about the different lofts like in South Africa and then in England, and these guys are all competing, trying to achieve the same thing, and even their lofts they're all just so different based on what each person thinks works best for them.
Yeah, you're right about that. But generally, the smaller ones, like a small setup, everybody can utilize kind of the same format if you really want to get down to for a basic beginner loft, anyhow, just to get them going, get them started, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been great, hearing about your journey. I want to encourage anybody else listening right now, if there's ever a topic or anything you want to talk about, send us an email, talk about it. You want to come on and talk about it, we'll do that too. Ryan, thanks for coming on and talking with us today. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much. And everybody out there, you guys, keep flying.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the All About Pigeons podcast. Please help the pigeon hobby by telling your fellow club members or other pigeon friends about the podcast, and make sure to leave a good review or at least a 5-star for the podcast wherever you listen. If you have a topic or a person you want to hear more about on the podcast, or if you yourself would like to be a guest, just send an email to allaboutpigeonspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.